Hey everyone, it's Collects Fallen Stars again, and I am back with a companion piece for my analysis on how Tae-eul fell in love with Lee Gon in The King Eternal Monarch. Now, this time though, we are going to take Lee Gon's side of the story and look at exactly how and when he fell in love with Tae-eul. This is a two-part video, and in a previous video, I talked about how Lee Gon, being a mathematician and rower, has dictated the way that he went about his relationship with Tae-eul. Now, for this second part, I am going to cover how Lee Gon's trauma from the night of treason has affected the three rules he follows for himself in the exact moment when he fell for Jang Tae-eul. The first thing he had to confront the moment he met Tae-eul at Gwangwamun Square was the difference between the imagined and the real version of Jang Tae-eul. After they bicker and he insults her intelligence by asking, "It seems you don't know what a parallel world is. Did you not study science?" He finally observes something about her. He says, "Is this what your personality is like? I have never imagined it. I thought you would be softer. This is new." And this signals to the audience that he is aware that the Jung Tae-eul he had imagined and possibly loved for the last 25 years is different from the real Jung Tae-eul. He might have arrived at the scene loving only the idea of Tae-eul, but as soon as the second episode starts, he takes it upon himself to actually educate himself on all things Jung Tae-eul, setting aside all of his built-up notions about her. In the precinct, even in the midst of his interrogation, he takes the time to really look at her and come to a decision that she looked better in real life. So that's great, right? He prefers the three-dimensional version of her as opposed to a picture. And then when Tae-eul finally released him from jail, he reveals that he has already pumped Unsuk for information about her life. He is making sure that he gets to know her right from the get go. It was also in the second episode that he went to the library to get to know her world's history. And then he looked up the poet Kim So-wol and bought his book before going back to his world, just because Tae-eul randomly quoted him during their conversation in the bamboo forest in episode 3. Now, he didn't completely let go of his imagined version of Tae-eul because he did manage to get a short glimpse of a softer Tae-eul during their early days together. But time had to stop before he could see this side of hers, because at this point, she still didn't believe anything he said and was less likely to trust him enough to show him her softer side. So when time stopped, that was the first time that he got to see Tae-eul as he had imagined her all this time. It was just there, buried underneath the hard, flat earther exterior. He just had to wait till the ninth episode to get a taste of this sweeter, softer side of hers. Now, he also asks her important questions like, "Why did you become a detective?" Which is essential when you're trying to get to know someone. You ask them about their dreams to get an idea about the kind of person they are. Now, when Taeil answers, "Not everyone in the world can be brave, so I decided to become brave," it absolutely fascinated him. For someone who's had his life set for him the moment he was born, the fact that someone could make a choice about which direction to take their lives must have amazed him. He admires this trait, that she can make a decision to be a cop just like that. Notice also that she didn't say, "I am brave, so I joined the police force." She said, "I decided to become brave." If you look at Lee Gon, the kind of decisions he tends to make are what to do. Do I leave for my country? Do I stay home? Do I stay a little bit more? Do I give her my name? But the one thing Taeil shows him is that he can make decisions on the kind of person that he wants to be, just as she did. So, as he's getting to know her, learning her, he's also learning from her. Why is this important? Because his identity is tied to him being a king. There's a flashback of his time with his father on episode 4 where his father talks about the duties of a king. He asks, "Do you think you can fulfill this calling, Gon?" So it's all about performing a duty that is attached to the title of king. Can you do it? It is never about what kind of king do you want to be, which makes this next part very important. After she talks about her own dreams and what she wants for herself, she asks him, "So that's my story. Tell me what kind of king you are. A young, handsome, and rich king?" The question appears to pleasure him as much as bother him. He answers a rower, mathematician, a well grown orphan, and the owner of the four tiger sword. A king who has never been asked such a question and trying his best not to panic. This is her asking him, how have you been doing as a king so far? How are you? It is a question on his well being as a king. Like whenever he returns to her from his world, he always asks her how she's been and if she's been well. It appears to have the same effect on him. It pleases him to know that she wants to know how he has been doing, but then he also has no idea how to answer her question, and this makes him panic. Since no one ever bothered to ask him what kind of person, what kind of king did he want to be, he never thought about it. He simply accepted that he was a king and he had to fulfill the duties that came with it. It probably never occurred to him that he can decide what kind of king he wanted to be. It wasn't just a job, which I suspect is how he sees it. That's why he likes escaping from time to time when it becomes too much. But here was Tae-eul teaching him how to be a better king, because being a cop is so much more than just a job for TaeEul. Lee Gon is slowly becoming a better king just by talking to TaeEul. Imagine how much more glorious he would become once he gives himself fully to her, and she reciprocates that love. Ironically, though, this love that taught him how to choose to be brave is the same love that he has to give up when he finally chooses to be a brave king and save both worlds. But we still have one more episode, so that's still up in the air. So now let's go back to simpler times when their only problems themselves and their own trust issues. So, as I said, he makes great effort to really get to know her, and once he's able to tell apart the imagined Jung Tae-eul and the real one, he lets her know that he much prefers the real version of Tae-eul. At the end of episode 2, he tells her, "You're always busy and you don't care much for me. Because of you, I'm powerless here, but it's fine. You are much more amazing than I had imagined." This moment was especially pitiful because he said this after revealing to her that he felt hurt, that she kept leaving him when she's the only person he knows in this world. But even through his hurt feelings, he is able to understand why she does this. He understands that she's busy, that she has a life, and that to her he was simply just a stranger. So if we jump to episode 8, when Tae-eul asks him if he would have fallen for her if she had been rude and decided not to help him, Lee Gon really wasn't lying when he said, "I would have understood, and that understanding would have led for me to fall for you." Because he was already doing it as early as the second episode. She had just upset him, and there he was, understanding why and still finding her amazing despite it all. He tells her this in what seems like a love confession at first, but it really isn't. When he compares her to the number 0, he is essentially saying that she alone can make him weak, but at the same time has the power to give him strength, and that whenever he felt trapped, she was the only one who had the power to save him, like that night of treason. He was seeing firsthand the effect she has on him. And he sees that she already has this much power and influence over him, even without an established relationship. That is how much power he has handed over to her by the simple fact that he has hung on to her existence for the last 25 years. This was not a confession of love, but somehow it feels heavier than that. I appreciate how he didn't rush to say the words "I love you" to her at this moment, but instead chose to show her what she meant to him. I feel like saying "I love you" is sometimes a cop out. I'm just gonna lump all of these feelings for you together and call it love. But Lee Gon does not do that. He constantly reveals to her how much she affects him. He is constant in allowing himself to be vulnerable and honest with how he feels for her. "You look better in real life" is attraction. "Why are you tying your hair? Don't tie your hair" is a marked preference for the Tae-eul in real life, because the Tae-eul in his imagination has her hair gathered in a low ponytail. "Don't go, it took 25 years for me to meet you, I hope today will be a long day" is him begging or bargaining for more time with her after having pined after her for so long. And he doesn't hide the fact that he has pined for her for a really long time. Thank you for everything because you existed somewhere I was less lonely for the past 25 years is deep gratitude. Just the thought of her somewhere brought him comfort in his lonely life, and that's a powerful thing. Most people depend on an actual presence of a person for them to be significant enough in their life. But for Lee Gon, just the idea of her had been enough. That's cool, Lieutenant Jung Tae-eul is open admiration for her character and spirit. But I think what really drove it home for me, and also my favorite declaration of devotion, is when he said, I imagined bringing you here lots of times before. When she asked him why he looked so calm after bringing her into the palace, and the entire staff erupted in disarray. It is a very simple line, but so naked in its honesty. And Lee Min-ho delivers it with the glee of a child who opens his gift on Christmas morning, gets exactly what he wants, and proceeds to tell his parents thank you because he's dreamed of it a whole year, and now it's his. Except for Lee Gon, he's dreamed of it for 25 years already. Now, just the weight of that longing is flabbergasting. Can you imagine anyone loving you this much? Now, however, for all of Lee Gon's openness about how he feels for Tae-eul, I don't think he ever fully allowed her into his world until the sixth episode. And this is because of the three rules he always abided by when it comes to cut mo dun sa this much. Okay. Cut mo dun sa anyone loving you this much. Game. However, for all of Lee Gon's openness about how he feels for Tae-eul, I don't think he ever fully allowed her into his world until the sixth episode. And this is because of the three rules he always abided by when it comes to himself. And all three are rooted in his trauma from that night of treason in 1994. He doesn't eat food that hasn't been tasted beforehand. No one touches his body. And no one calls him by his name. Now, the first two are broken as early as the first episode, and second, Tae-eul cuffs him at Gwanghwamun Square and once more back at the precinct. Then on the third episode, she tapped Lee on the shoulder on her way to the restroom. By this time, he's not even protesting that she's touching him. He even welcomes it now. And this is growth for him, considering that the last time someone touched him in such close proximity, he almost died. And on their first dinner together, he actually surrenders that rule willingly, using that point to tell her what the idea of her has done to comfort him for the last 25 years. But his last rule, the one rule he clung steadfastly to, was the one that did not allow anyone to call him by his name. He consistently refused to give her his name in the first four episodes, and even when he finally did give it to her at the start of the fifth episode, he still stuck to the rule. He gave her his name, but she is still not allowed to use it. Now, in the fifth and sixth episode, we see him in Uber boyfriend mode. He's like a kid who finally got a puppy. Here, let me take care of you. Here, let me feed you. Here, let me give you alcohol. Here, let me kiss you. Here, let me pick you up when you're stranded. Let me play with your hand and show everyone how I feel about you. Let me pat your head to comfort you when you're lonely. He's basically a giver. Let me love you. But the danger in being with someone like this is that they control what part of them you're getting, because they pick and choose very frequently, so you never feel like you're lacking for any affection. But you'll never know the full extent of what they're giving and holding back because they won't let you in. And he hasn't, not completely at least. TaeEul had to find out the whole deal with Lilim in the night of treason by Google searching Lee Gon and his family. When he tells her, I guess now you know what route you are standing in front of. It's my hell and my history that was engraved on my body by the greed of the person that killed my father and strangled me. He simply confirms what she found out, but he didn't offer the story himself, no matter how vulnerable he is with everything else. This source of his trauma is still something he struggles with, and the way that he clings to the rule that his name must never be called by anyone is a manifestation of this. Names are deeply personal, And the people who are close enough to him to say it out loud are both dead. So since he was 8, his name has never been called. He has always existed as Peha to everyone, and this safe distance has guaranteed his safety. No one will ever get close enough to try and murder him like his uncle did. But this also afforded him great loneliness. Because Peha is only a title, but being king has swallowed up his entire existence. That's why he panicked when TaeEul asked him what kind of king he was. That's why the idea of his purpose for surviving that night still evades him. Because if he doesn't know who he is beyond the title of Peha or king, it's going to be pretty hard to find out his purpose as well. And his name is his last barrier against TaeEul. He's given her everything except for the right to call him by his name. But she doesn't wait for it. She punches right through this wall when she said, "I will see you again, Lee Gon," when he asked her if she would wait for him. And he is left there dumbfounded because she dared. He says, "I thought my name was not supposed to be called, but I guess it was supposed to be called only by you." And with this, by calling him by his name, she is now the person closest to him. And the impact that this had on him was huge. He has been an orphan since he was 8, and no one has probably called his name with love until now. She had just blasted his whole world wide open. And this, I think, must have been the moment when Lee Gon fell in love with Jung Tae-eul completely, helplessly, and fiercely. That's it. That's all I have to say for their love story. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening.